The following broadcast is intended for a right-wing audience. Communist discretion is advised.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, LB Muniz, and this has been Awake Podcast for Better Sense Making. Hope you like the new theme music. Got some time in the car here, and so thought I would record a few quick episodes for you guys. And, well, my bookmarks on X build up over time, so I thought I would quickly go through a few of the different things that I saw there. And let's keep things topical for at least the first one that I'll release for you guys, which is the Super Bowl. Now, the Super Bowl was this past weekend. Eagles won. Go Birds. Chiefs lost. That sucks. A lot of people are saying that it's rigged. I say, who cares? I watch basically 2 or 3 football games a year, but it's always fun to watch, and the Super Bowl still is a big cultural phenomenon for people, and so it's worth commenting on. Last year, you might recall that I spent some time breaking down a story, that advertisement from He Gets Us, and talked about some of the problems. They had another ad this year. It wasn't, you could definitely tell they toned it down. And of course, that's just one more example of how the culture has shifted, at least slightly, over the last year. You can use these big cultural events as markers for these sorts of things. But really, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, for reasons that, I don't know, I'm sure somebody's done the research on, and hey, if you have and you want to let me know what that looks like, let's talk about it. But Neil deGrasse Tyson is, for better or worse, and perhaps worse for the field of astrophysics, one of the most prominent secular scientists that the popular culture pushes on you. I believe, at least so from what I can remember of him actually becoming some more of a household name, was when he took over Carl Sagan's Universe. They redid the Universe show, and they did him instead of Carl Sagan, which kind of like says, hey, let's zoom out from where we are and see where our place is in the cosmos. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking a look at what space might look like. There's nothing wrong with wondering what the stars are and how the planets move and all these things. These are questions that as humans we have been divining, trying to answer through many different ways. For as long as we've had recorded history, right? And, you know, frankly, I've even thought recently that, gosh, it's been a long time since I've sat and looked at the stars. I'm not one of those lucky people that live in an area where I can see the stars on a regular basis. But it is always wonderful when you are in the country to look up and just get a taste of what your ancestors actually looked at every single night. But Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't just tweet and talk about the stars. He loves to insert himself into political and cultural and religious conversations in particular. And one thing that I love about 2025 America, one thing I love about where the culture was when I was growing up versus where it is now, is that a lot more people have less time for a strictly secular, materialist interpretation of the world. And I would go so far as to argue that the new atheist movement that was oh so edgy when we were growing up, it was cool to rebel against God. It was cool to say that God is just a, what do they say? That God is just a sky fairy or a sky demon or something, some other such nonsense about what it is that Christians and people of faith believe in. It just doesn't work anymore. And one of the interesting things is that I think they kind of realize it, and so they try to say something that I think, 20 years ago when there wasn't X or Twitter, and they might just go on and say something, and they might go on a Tonight Show and be like, "So Neil, you don't believe in God. Tell me why that is." Right? And he's been known as saying stuff like, "Oh, well, the universe is cold, caring, and indifferent," and that was a big one, and that was when the great Norm Macdonald was still alive. And so that original tweet is, "The universe is blind to our sorrows and indifferent to our pain. Have a nice day." That's a 2019 tweet. To which Norm Macdonald said, "Neil, there's a logic flaw in your little aphorism that seems quite telling. Since you and I are part of the universe, then we would also be indifferent and uncaring. Perhaps you forgot that we are not superior to the universe, but merely a fraction of it. Nice day indeed. And it's one of those things, like Thomas Sowell had this great saying, that the great aphorism, I think it was Thomas Sowell at least, this great aphorism that he would say that a lot of times it would take a paragraph to debunk a bumper sticker. And one of the best parts about the fact of the Twitter X medium, of the microblogging medium, is that we've all gotten a lot better at saying more with less. So what did he tweet? He says, curious that talented athletes frequently credit God when they win, but we rarely see them blame God when they lose. Now, of course, this signals a lot of things, so let's take them beat by beat, shall we? In the first place, I think this reminds me of a thought that I had when I first started university classes and I took a comparative religion course, and I realized something quite early on in that course, which is that most people, and we live in a predominantly Christian culture, a predominantly Christian nation, so most people are brought up in some flavor of Christianity, whether that be Catholicism, Orthodoxy, or some vein of Protestantism. Most people make it to adulthood without expanding their idea of divinity and of what God is beyond some bearded dude in the sky. Now, anybody who spends any time studying religion and studying theological concepts knows that nobody really thinks of God as a being in the sky except for your cool neighborhood atheist who uses that as a useful foil to counteract arguments that other people made. And let me say it this way. There's nothing wrong with the fact that most people don't spend a lot of time delving into theological matters. I don't think, for the record, that most people should or that it's needed. In fact, I think that's one thing that religion, that the best religions show, is a concept that I've delved into before, which is that things can be both complicated and simple, and the best ideas operate both at a layer of complexity and a layer of simplicity. So it's not simply that things can be made, it's not simply that things are complicated, because things are complicated. The world is a complicated place, but the world is also a simple place. So the fact of the matter is, most of the time when atheists are responding to arguments, because most popular atheists in the new atheist vein especially, haven't spent that much time dealing with the meditations of the church fathers, or even the most basic cursory and study of scripture and what it actually means, outside of what they learned in Sunday school as children. And of course, if you take a lesson for a child and you extrapolate it to a lesson for an adult, you will find some things lacking. There are reasons for this. There is a reason why you learn basic arithmetic in elementary school and more complicated forms of mathematics like algebra as you get older, right? It's that kids aren't as smart as adults. So if you are an adult and you are always calling back to arguments that you learned as a child, well, once you brush up against somebody who actually knows something, you start to look pretty foolish themselves. And I think for a long time, Christians in particular were far more concerned with not appearing mean or overbearing with their ideas, and this culture has definitely shifted from that, and I think that's a good thing. Now, let's take the argument on its face. And briefly analyze why it is so, ignorant, really. I mean, here we're supposed to have this brilliant man, somebody who is lauded as a great scientist, somebody who is supposed to, know what the heck it is that they're talking about. So why is it that he can sound so stupid with a matter that is so important to so many people? Again, I think a lot of it is because you get away with it, and also because just because you are an astrophysicist doesn't mean you have a broad breadth of knowledge. In fact, most PhDs have to specialize in a very small area of science in order to get such a thing, and so there's a hyper focus on something that their intelligence has been dedicated to for a long period of time. I said years ago, long before I had a podcast, long before I wrote in a public forum, I said years ago that the time for philosophers is coming back, if for no other reason than we need that generalist interpretation of the world, because things are too complicated for specialization to be the call for the day. Nothing against specialists. They are still obviously needed in many fields and, of course, will always exist. However, we need people to synthesize ideas, not just come up with new interpretations of something that has existed for, generations and generations. So it's curious, he says, that talented athletes frequently credit God when they win, but we rarely see them blame God when they lose. Well, that just sounds like, I hate to repeat myself, but the argument of a child. And the very easiest way for me to say this is ironically what King James, if my memory serves, added to the end of the Our Father. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory now and forever. To all laud and honor is yours, Lord. These are the types of things we say as Christians, as believers in Jesus Christ. The glory of what we achieve in this life on this earth is not for us, but it is for Him. All the good that we have in our life is because of our actions, but through His grace. So the reason why you credit God when you win an award, when you win the Super Bowl, when you win anything, is an exercise in humility. It says that I am not the all-seeing, all-knowing aspect of this universe. And in fact, the only reason why I'm here is because of the guidance that I've received through my faith tradition in particular, because for everybody, even the people who turn away from their faith, you can't escape moral foundations as a human being, right? I've talked about this a lot. We are creatures of faith. We are creatures that need to know there is a purpose of things in order to discover it. So you give thanks to God because that is what you are supposed to do, but you're not supposed to blame God because you lose. Now, we all have moments of weakness, and certainly there have been people who have cursed God for many a thing, for taking away a loved one too soon, for the burdens and trials that they experience in their life. They might look and wonder, why me? That is a very human thing for us to do. But it is not one of those things that we are supposed to broadcast or advertise or talk about in front of cameras in a big event. So yeah, it's not that curious that athletes aren't going to blame God when they lose, because why would you blame God that you lost a game? But you thank God when you win because you're recognizing that there's something bigger than yourself. If you like today's episode, do me a favor, go to beenawake.com, subscribe with your email, tell a friend, and follow me on all social media at the LB Muniz.
The mission of better sense making continues. Go to beenawake.com and subscribe today for future broadcasts.